Hi, I'm Crystal. I've decided to undertake an art journal project this fall using all of my Tim Holtz products. I'm so inspired when he does the lives to go shopping, and so I have a wealth of Tim Holtz products, and I am missing the journal challenge. So this is my first page, and I'm going to talk about how I got there. And here's all of my Tim Holtz products, except the ink and so forth. So the first thing I did was I got out the paper that I have. I have some 12 by 12 and I have some of the ideology backgrounds. And I flipped through and chose an appropriate number of pages to work with. I can't have the whole pad in front of me the whole time. I really need to reduce the choices. So I went through and picked out a few pages of each and cut those down, and I also chose some watercolor cardstock and some craft heavy stock and so forth, and this is what I'm going to work with. So I started by choosing one of the printed papers for today's project, and it's pretty lightweight. So I did cut some Nita 110-pound cardstock to give it more heft. I chose a die to work with, and then I stamped the floral trims in antique linen and embossed in evergreen glaze. I've put some oxide onto a foam plate, oxide reinkers, in order to do a little watercoloring on my stamped floral trims. And I'm using spun sugar, Victorian velvet, and shabby shutters. So I really like the way that the oxides show up on this craft heavy stock. It's a very nice look. The oxides show up very nicely. And I'm not sure Victorian velvet was the best choice, but I'm committed, so I'm going with it. So after I painted my flowers, I did go ahead and put some of that oxide onto the rest of that craft heavy stock panel to use for some die cutting. So that's just a mix of shabby shutters and spun sugar that I'm putting on the rest of the panel. Once I've got that finished to my satisfaction, I'm going to fussy cut the floral trim, and then I'm going to move on to the rest of the page. But of course I couldn't just leave it alone. I keep trying for a loose watercoloring style. I can't get there. I'm a completist. I have to paint everything. Tried to be a little looser with the panel for the die cutting, but even there, after I die cut the clock, I did go back and touch it up a little bit. So now while that's drying, I'm going to take some decal scissors and I'm going to cut this pattern paper, and I'm going to rough up the edges a little bit. So the decal scissors help, but after I've got the edges trimmed, I'm going to put a little water down on my mat, get the edge of the paper wet, and then I'm just using my fingers and my fingernails to rough up the edge of that page to make it look a little worn, since this is very vintage style. Just roughing that up and tearing it up a little bit. Once that is done, I'm going to take a little bit of that leftover ink, and I've got a little piece of packaging there just to avoid getting this all over my hands, and I'm putting a little bit of that spun sugar and Victorian velvet ink down onto the blankish part of my printed paper, and putting a little bit of the ink on the edge and then drying that off. Next, on my background panel, I'm taking some matte gel and I'm taking some book pages, and I promise this book was beyond redemption. I bought it for $1.25 and half the pages were gone when I got it, so it really did not have any utility left as a book. So once I've got the matte gel down, I just put some printed words all around the edges of the page. That's all you're going to see. And if you do this, be sure to wash your brush, because you will ruin your brush if you leave that matte gel in it. Next, I'm getting some shabby shutter distress ink, and I'm just using a blending brush to add some of that color to the edge of the page. And then I'm putting a little bit of tissue paper just in the center of that page where it's kind of blank, using matte gel again to apply the tissue paper to the page, and I'm just going to tear off the excess with my hands. Now I'm taking a little bit of Gathered Twigs Distress Dye ink to do a little bit more color on the edge of the printed paper, and now I'm going to attach my die cut clock face, and I added some ephemera from the Curator pack. Clock face didn't stand out quite enough, so I'm using some Prismacolor pencils just to darken the edge of the clock so it stands out from that background just a little bit more. Not sure why I did the inside of the clock face. That's going to be covered up by the clock face, but there you go. So now I'm going to attach the clock face and the hands. And this is where we are at this point. I think there's a little too much sameness on this page. I wasn't really entirely happy with everything, but I'm going to go ahead and add a sticker from Small Talk off to the side there, and keep building my page, building my layers. I am gluing down the sticker just to make sure that it's going to adhere, because that tissue is a little bit rough. Since I wasn't really happy with the floral trim or with the contrast on the page, I did cut out an extra stamped version of the floral trim and went ahead and die cut that in the same colors that I had used previously. I'm not going to use all of this. I'm going to trim off the parts that are left white there. I'm just going to attach the leaves and the flowers. And here we are with the extra flowers and leaves attached. I made my quote a little bit happier, and I put some numbers on my clock face. And that is the end of my project. So I thank you for joining me today, and I will be doing this every week until we come to December. Thanks.